This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rod Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hey, this is Brant Menzwar, and you are listening to Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you guys for taking the time to hang out. Thank you for downloading. Speaking of downloads, before I forget, this past week, the podcast hit over 50,000 total downloads, which is pretty amazing because this is just like one of those checkpoints where you look back on the journey and you think about everything that you've been through and trying to put this together and present it and produce an interview, and all the hours that have gone into it have just been I don't even think about it. I look at all the episodes, 170 plus, and what that equates to in hours put into the show and everything that I've learned about, and it's just amazing. I don't even think about it as far as work. I think it more as a revolution in the sense that I become more aware about life and expand in other areas of my life. You know, I've become very, very, more open to different possibilities and ideas, and I become more open-minded in my pursuit of development and my pursuit of self-love and my pursuit of expansion and knowing and expanding my curiosity and following that wherever it takes me and being open to where it leads me. And this podcast has been such a catalyst in my development, has been such a catalyst in my search for existential meaning and my pursuit of higher consciousness and my pursuit of a collective consciousness, if there is one, is higher power, universal source, whatever you want to call it. Like, it has led me down so many different holes, like rabbit holes that I never envisioned for myself. I remember just things popping up for me or popping up, presenting itself to me without me even trying. And that's one of the things I want to hit on, is that when you're doing the thing that it is that you're supposed to be doing, like, the effort is no longer there. Like, you love doing it, you enjoy it, and like life or the universe presents you with these little breadcrumbs in the direction that you need to go. People come out of the woodwork to help you out. It seems like the road shows itself. You know, like, you don't know what the path is. You don't know really where to go. You're just kind of like, all right, well, I'll try this. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start seeing the path before it comes, before the next step. And then it's like more that happens, and that becomes your path. And it's just funny how I look back and the people that I've met and have been able to connect with, like, it has been so effortless. Like, it is so funny though, because the more that I try to do things that I know it's not ready for, right, that the time it's not the right time, I should say, the harder it is to make those connections or get those guests, like, or I shouldn't be going in that direction. And the way that I should be going is I don't even know. It's like there's no resistance in that direction that you're supposed to go. Like, it just seems like you're gliding along, and it's like things unfold. So my advice to you, whoever is listening that is trying to pursue their path, like, it really is a path of least resistance. Like, it is really that. I think that you create for yourself, and that's really a telltale of where you're at and what you need to be doing. A lot of people are like, you need to grind. You need to work, make that happen. I think there is some aspect of that. I think you should be doing the initial work to get that momentum moving. But once you're on your way, I think that you follow where the current takes you. And I think a lot of people get confused with this idea that you have to be so persistent that you need to break through that wall and do whatever it takes to get there. I get it. I think but you misconstrue that idea with being like perseverance. Like, I'm in it for the long haul, and yes, I will hit speed bumps and I will hit dead ends and I will get people that don't want to come on and that, they ghost me. But my perseverance is going to allow me to continue along that path. When you hit that brick wall, it might be the universe saying that this isn't where you need to go. Like, you need to stop. Like, there's like this analogy that I just read where it's like this fly is trying to get into this house, and like he's like continuously trying to get through the window, and he keeps hitting the window and hitting the window and hitting the window, and like he's never gonna get in. Like, he just has, but he's persistent. He's like, I'm gonna break through this wall or break through this window, and it's not gonna happen. But like 10 feet away, there's an open door. Like, all he has to do is take a step back and reassess, reevaluate where he's at, or explore different ways. And I think that has been my main lesson in this podcast, is learn different ways, like learn different techniques, try different things. Like, if you look back at all my episodes, they're all so very different and they're all so very unique, and my style has changed so much. My philosophy on life has changed so much. My attitude towards life has changed, and I have no one to thank but, I guess, the podcast has been kind of like the thing that has helped me and hurt me in the same sense of, like, it introduced me to my ego that I knew I kind of had, but I didn't know that I had, if that makes sense. Like, it introduced me hardcore to my ego, and then I realized what that was, and then it reintroduced me to my true self, who I'm in love with and I enjoy being around, and I love being able to learn upon how to create higher consciousness for myself. And I know people are kind of like, what does that mean? But more so going inside of myself, going inward, and finding new possibilities for myself, and I don't know, it's strengthened that relationship with who I am, and I've built so much more self-love just with the knowings that I've been able to stumble upon in my path. But that is the path. The path is it can be treacherous, and it can be loving, and it can be gorgeous and beautiful and humbling and scary and all of that, but it is the path. And I think the hardest part is the first step, and this podcast has been a very unique tool in my life for expansion and learning and loving and communicating, for sure. And I look back on all of these episodes, and I still can't believe that I'm doing this, and I can't believe that I have the opportunity to speak, and you guys download and listen. So I must be doing something right. But thank you guys so much for all the support that you guys give, and all of the support that you show by downloading the show. And I ask, if this could help someone or listening to this that you might know, share it with them. Let them, it's not about me. It's about the people that I have on the show, and I can share their stories and share their experiences with you, and hopefully you can draw power from that and energy from that and apply it to your lives, and it can take you to places that you never thought you would go. So that's my main mission. That's what I'm trying to do, is help the suffering out there that we create for ourselves with our ego, and I guess harness that energy, reharness that energy that we spend so much on the ego and going after all the wrong things. Oh man, kind of a long rant, but I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate today's guest, Dr. Douglas Harrington. He has 25 years of experience in the research, development, commercialization, and expansion of innovative healthcare technologies and services. We have a pretty interesting conversation about COVID, about heart disease, about homeschooling, about his wife's battle with cancer, which is really just fascinating how they're going about treating that. And just to give you kind of a preview, here is a little bit of our conversation.
We're not used to this homeschooling. and they had a very difficult time with it. And then I feel for you because I know, but what really concerns me is that we've seen, and this is just in Orange County, the suicide rate for kids exceeds the death rate for the COVID virus. And that is not right. And it turns out that kids are not going to get sick. They're not going to die for the most part. And actually the latest data coming out of multiple studies is showing that putting kids back to school is not creating super spreader situations.
I cannot describe to you the difference that I saw in my children when they were back in school. Like I at first I didn't know how it was going to be handled on school, online platforms for children. It was very hard for us. I'm not a teacher. I don't have a lot of patience. My wife, she's an RN and she works a ton of hours, and it was strenuous on us. And I know a lot of people that it was strenuous on, and it still is in some of the public schools. And I can't reiterate the importance of that social aspect for children to be a part of their community in schools, and for the teachers. Shout out to the teachers. Like you guys are so underpaid. It's not even funny. Like I appreciate you so much. What you guys put up with. I shouldn't say that. Put up with what you guys do for our children. Like you guys deserve $1 million a year or more. I don't care. I'll give you everything. But you seriously, you guys are the true heroes. Seriously. I mean, after 5 minutes of homeschooling, I was done. You guys, seriously, I appreciate you so much for all that you do and continue to do throughout this pandemic, and how you have basically just continue to teach and continue to inspire children. Thank you so much. So with that said, I'm excited to present to you this conversation with Dr. Harrington. So without further ado, here we go.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dr. Douglas Harrington, Harrington, and I am the chairman of the Guard Heart Foundation, which is a not-for-profit 501c3, which is dedicated to helping people better understand how to improve their health.
Dr. Harrington, I appreciate you taking the time, my man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting here in Newport Beach. All my friends are in there watching some debate. And
some debate?
Yeah.
I wonder which one that is.
I don't know. It's one of those strange things. It's really nice. I'm enjoying being not in there. So
I can only bet. Are they? No one's fighting yet, are they?
Not from what I can see. It's not high on my priority list. I'm all about healthcare. I don't care about that stuff. So
That's right. So what are you fired up about right now as far as healthcare? Like, what do you got going on? What's on your radar? What do we need to know right now?
So what? For me, the biggest thing is that most people don't know that the majority of what they're doing to themselves really controls how they evolve and how they live their life and how they survive, so to speak. And I think most people don't realize that 90% of, for instance, heart disease is due to lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's lifestyle means that you have control over that. The same thing goes with COVID, which is, obviously at the top of everybody's priority list. This is a viral infection that's impacted the world. The virus itself is related to flu viruses, to cold viruses. And the interesting thing is the majority of people who are infected by the virus will not have any symptoms. But there are people who definitely don't do well, And for the longest time, people were trying to figure out, why are some people so impacted by this and other people aren't? And now we have an idea. Within the last 2 weeks, there have been a series of papers published which basically showed that, like if I look at you you look pretty darn healthy. You're
Mhm.
thin, you're young, you've got your hair, which is good.
A little bit, balding back here a little bit.
But I mean, you're in pretty good shape. And some people that look like you actually get very deathly ill. And it turns out that what we've identified is that those people have a genetic abnormality in the way they fight viruses. And it involves a gene for a compound in your body called interferon. And what's important about that is that if you don't make a good interferon, you don't really fight viruses. So these are people that look like you, they're relatively healthy, and they shouldn't be high risk, and yet they don't do well. And now we know why. And then there's another group of people who actually make antibodies, which are supposed to protect your body, but they make antibodies to interferon. And 94% of those are male. So, I think we can explain the people that don't do well with this virus and those people with comorbidities like diabetes, heart disease, those sorts of things. That's very explainable. But at the end of the day, the actual death rate from COVID is relatively low, but it is not something that you should take lightly. And so COVID is obviously at the top of our list in terms of things that we are looking at,
Sure.
we should be
Sure.
considerate.
So heart disease, right? Like you said, we are directly correlated with that. I'm assuming diet, lifestyle choices, partying, not getting out enough, walking. Is that right? Like, I mean, do we need to be doing all of those things, like eating right, exercising? I mean, is that all directly correlated with heart disease?
Well, yeah. So like, the interesting thing about the COVID virus is that in order for it to get into your body, it needs to bind to a receptor called the ACE2 receptor. ACE2 is involved in the regulation of your blood pressure. And it turns out that the majority of tissues in your body that have that receptor are in the lining of your arteries. So if you think about the symptoms that people get with COVID and the things that are very severe for these people, it's young people less than 50 who are having heart attacks and strokes. The problem with your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, your heart, your brain, it's because the virus likes the arteries. And the arteries feed your brain and all those organs I just mentioned. And at the end of the day, if we can figure out how to protect the lining of your arteries, you're actually in a situation to protect your body from the ravages of that virus. Now, when it relates to heart disease, the underwriting cause of most of heart disease, and we're talking about people that get heart attacks, that sort of thing, is really related to damage to the lining of your arteries, okay? And I think most people on your show have probably heard about free radicals, antioxidants, that sort of thing. Well, it turns out that free radicals are very commonly involved in damaging the lining of your arteries. If you live in a city like Los Angeles, I'm an hour away from Los Angeles, the amount of pollution in the air there basically stimulates free radicals. And your body needs a mechanism to kind of fight that. And your body does have a mechanism to do that. But if you overwhelm your body, you end up in a situation where the damage is not reversible. It continues to progress. And what we try and do is we strive to interfere with the progression of that damage to your arteries, okay? So, and just to be clear, the COVID virus damages your arteries. It damages the lining of your arteries. That is the main pathology of that disease, okay?
No, I'll take your word for it. You're the doctor. I know it's bad. Well, how do you, like, as a doctor, but I mean, like, how do you find, like, I mean, where do you go for the research? Like, I mean, I'm just a layman, right? Like, I'm asking you as a doctor, like, where do you go to read up on the new research, the things that are coming up, and new developments, the treatments? Where do you go for that?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a problem in some ways, because the whole COVID thing has been a little bit politicized. And for me, I'm like agnostic as to where the data comes from, but I like to know that the data is good. And so at the end of the day, what I'd like your listeners to understand is that the virus is like any other virus. It's a coronavirus. And for those of you listening, the cold virus is a coronavirus. Some of the flu viruses are related to the coronavirus. And the bottom line with that is that your body is designed to protect you from infections like the coronavirus. And in doing so, what it does is it generates two different forms of immunity. And the first one involves your T cells. Now, for those of you listening, there are two types of immunity. There's T cells, which attack the virus directly. And then there are B cells, which make antibodies. And you probably heard about serology testing. So the B cells make those. Now, what happens is that if you've had the common cold, and there are 4 varieties, your T cells get primed to fight the coronavirus 19 that we're talking about. So there's a significant number of people out there who have already experienced an infection with a cold, and they have some sort of T cell immunity to it. But the other form, the B cells, make antibodies, and these are like bullets. I call the B cells are guns, and the bullets they make are antibodies, and they attack the virus directly. And the majority of people who are infected with the virus are going to make antibodies to the virus. That converts some level of immunity to your body against the virus. It means that you're less likely to infect other people, and it means you're very unlikely to get reinfected. So, you know, the beauty of all of this is that the majority of people, we're talking 90% plus, are going to do fine. You know, they may get a little bit sick. They're not going to be deathly ill like some of the people. And as I mentioned earlier, the people that get deathly ill may have a genetic abnormality, or they may have comorbidities like diabetes or heart disease or cancer or something, or obesity. These things damage the lining of your arteries. And that is the common denominator for this virus, okay?
Wow. Did you ever, I mean, think about your career. Think about the education that you went through. Like, you couldn't have imagined like living through an era like this right now, like that we're living in right now, where you got the election going on, you got, you know, coronavirus, you got people are quarantined, like people don't know where to go for accurate data. I mean, think about that. Like, through your entire career, have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, unfortunately, I have.
Really?
Yeah. So do you remember when, you're too young, I can tell by looking at you too. Remember when Gerald Ford was president?
I remember reading about him, yeah.
Okay, so I pegged you right there. So when he was president, he inherited a mess. It was called the swine flu, okay? And at that time, they tried to develop something they called a trivalent vaccine. And I was one of the guinea pigs for the vaccine.
Really?
I was a medical student. They said, hey, you know what? We'll pay
Extra
you
credit.
Yeah, well, no, they'll pay you $25. You come in, you get the vaccine, we'll see how you do, and away you go. So I got the vaccine. It turns out they cultured it on eggs. I'm allergic to eggs. I ended up in National Jewish Hospital in Denver. And, you know, for a week I was there with bleeding lungs, bleeding kidneys, that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, it turns out the swine flu vaccine caused a lot of problems because it was rushed through. So, you know, I've seen other pandemics that were like that. The H1N1 flu in 2009, there were more people infected in a shorter period of time. It infected younger people. But at the end of the day, what it amounts to is that our country has not been well prepared for these pandemics. And we really need, these are like mini pandemics, because in theory, some of the infections that could come could be like Ebola or some of these other more severe viruses. And we need to be better prepared for these things. And that's on our politicians, whether they're Democrat or Republican. It really makes no difference. We have to be anticipating the fact that As our population increases, the likelihood of transmitting infection between people is much higher, and we have to be prepared to be able to respond to these very quickly. Okay, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just feel like as a leader, as the president of the United States, you should be delegating that authority out to the governors of each state and saying, all right, you decide what you want to do. You know, like I feel like there should be some uniformity of what's going to happen, right? Like, I feel like if you're going to quarantine, that's fine. But like, I don't know, you still, like, you're in California, right? Like, you guys are still like red alert over there, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because we do testing in multiple areas here. We do COVID testing. And what's interesting is that in the lockdown areas, the infection rate is actually higher than, I'm in Orange County, and the infection rate here is much lower. There's no real good explanation for that. But you know, the bottom line is that, and this is really important from my perspective, I want people to understand that at this point in this pandemic, that there is a lot of things to be hopeful for. So for instance, the number of unused respirators is around 42,000 here. The fact that most people are not ending up in the ICU is a huge improvement. We know that some of the older drugs like dexamethasone are reducing the number of people that end up getting in the ICUs, and the number of people actually making it into the hospital are significantly lower. So all of this means that as we've kind of matured in this sort of pandemic, we've learned that there are things that we can do that are not requiring a vaccine, that we can do to really, you know, help people not end up in the hospital and be deathly ill. I am so optimistic as to where we are right now.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm excited. I think my kids just went back to school. We go to a private school, and what was it? Like 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, we went back to school for the first time since March, and I've never seen my kids more excited. Like, it's incredible. We did, you know, the homeschooling, the distance learning. Like, that was tough, and I know a lot of parents are feeling that. Like, it's tough.
So now let me tell you something.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I have 6 kids.
You have 6 kids?
6 kids, and my 2 youngest are identical twin boys. They're 16, and I've been homeschooling them for 6 years. So for us, it was not a big change.
Sure.
But what was interesting is that a lot of their friends were not used to this homeschooling, and they had a very difficult time with it. And then I feel for you because I know. But what really concerns me is that we've seen, and this is just in Orange County, the suicide rate for kids exceeds the death rate for the COVID virus. You know, and that is not right. And it turns out that kids are not going to get sick. They're not going to die for the most part. And actually, the latest data coming out of multiple studies is showing that putting kids back to school is not creating super spreader situations. I don't know if you've heard about super spreader situation.
No, I haven't.
It's essentially where you get somebody that's an individual that's shedding a lot of virus, and you may be on a train or a plane and they infect a lot of people. That is extremely rare. And it turns out that schools are not the source of that. So I honestly, from my perspective as a physician, think it's important to get kids back socializing, because this isolation is not good for them. That's
sure. No, it's not at all. Like, it's terrible. I mean, I don't know. Like, my kids, like, so I kind of get it, right? So the kids now, my son is 10 and my daughter's 8, and my daughter is way more like, you know, outside-y kind of, you know, playing soccer kind of person. And my son is obviously on like Fortnite, playing that, and I get it. It's like a different type of generation where that's where they hang out with the kids. You don't see a lot of kids hanging out in the neighborhoods too much anymore because they're all online playing like online games. I get it.
right.
But still, that social aspect of being able to go see in person. I mean, we are built. We evolved, right? Like,
We did. Yeah.
we need that communication. We need that face-to-face time. I mean, or else, you know, death, right? I mean, it's just
Yeah, you know, you're
terrible.
Yeah. And you know that the other thing is that you don't want people operating in fear. Like, yeah, it's an infection. The majority of people who get infected don't even have symptoms. That's the bottom line. 40 to 60% don't have symptoms. On the other hand, we shouldn't take it lightly because there are some people who don't do well, you know? So yeah, you got to take it seriously. But at the end of the day, you look at H1N1 flu and swine flu, and they're probably all equivalent in their risk to people. This is the first time that we've basically put healthy people in isolation. Normally, you would put the people that are most at risk. It is definitely not kids. They do really well, and so I think we really, you know, I'm as a physician and as a father, I really want my kids to be back socializing. I want them to be out there in the sunlight and getting, you know, exposure to other friends and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Get some of that vitamin D. What, like as a father, like as a parent, how do you, like, what are some tips for homeschooling? Like, what helps you? You've been doing it for 6 years. I mean, this is nothing. Like, I've been doing it 6 months. I'm ready to quit.
You know, the funny thing about homeschool is they get about 4 times the amount of homework, and it's really hard because the kids have to discipline themselves, you know, and I think the biggest trick is to just make sure they stay on top of things. And you know,
Have they so they've been doing it for 6 years, so they're 15 now. I mean, they've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
The twins,
Yeah,
that's tough.
Yeah, initially they weren't too fond of it, and it was because of the amount of homework. But you know, they had more flexibility. We travel a lot, so they've been to Indonesia, they've been to China, they've been to Japan, they've been to the Middle East and Canada and various places, and for them it worked out well. But I think the biggest issue is that it requires kids to be more disciplined about themselves to do the homework and stuff like that.
Well, how do you get them socialized, right? If they're studying from home, like where do you get that?
They do things together with their friends there. They have a lot of online friends, but we still are able to get them together. And some of their friends actually work with them. Like all of our kids, 5 of the 6 kids work with us in our business. And they have their friends that needed to get volunteer work. And so we have a charity. The t-shirt that I'm wearing, which you see here, is Guard a Heart Foundation. We have kids that volunteer for that and they get credit for that. So we do everything we can to help them get out there and get some experience in the real world. Because, you know, one of the biggest problems we have with kids coming out of our university system is they don't have a real world experience. They don't know how to come into the workforce and contribute. They don't know how to be independent thinkers. And so if anything we can do to help them in dealing with this pandemic and dealing with the lockdown, to get them to be more independent is really helpful to them to deal with real world, you know. So
that's awesome. Guard a Heart.
Guard a Heart Foundation. It's 100% of the money that goes into it goes back to the community. There are no employees of it. It's all volunteer. And we are doing, we've done COVID testing in areas of LA that nobody will go into, like South Central LA and Crenshaw. And these people are just the most exceptional people on the face of the earth. They have no fear. They just care about people, and the whole message is learn, detect, prevent. And they're teaching people how to do that with COVID and with heart disease and with cancer and that sort of thing. So
that's amazing. I love that. So when you go out there and you test in these communities, are you swabbing?
We do serology first if they're asymptomatic. And the reason that's important is because the swab is primarily used for symptomatic people. And the problem with that is it underestimates the actual prevalence of the disease in the community. Because remember, I said 40 to 60% of people who are infected are not going to have any symptoms. They may not even recognize that they've been infected. So the beauty of the serology is that it will identify people who had asymptomatic infections. and you get a better handle on how many people truly are infected. And what that amounts to is it turns out that the death rate is significantly lower than if you report only people who are symptomatic. Okay. And that's important because that tells you what the true effect of the disease, the true prevalence of the disease is in the community. And you can also identify areas where there's more infection than people expected. Like one of the things that we discovered up in LA was that in the 18 and under crowd, the infection rate was 19%, whereas overall the infection rate was around 11%. So we know that kids are not really paying attention to some of the social distancing or the safety practices. So what it amounts to is then the public health officials can go in there and educate the community. And the other thing that was interesting in LA was that we tested South Central LA with Curran Price. He's the councilman from District 9, a wonderful human being who cares so much about his people. And we did testing there, and it turns out that in the African American community, which nationally is reported to be around 18%, his rate of infection in his community was less than 3%. And I ascribe that to his community outreach program where they educated people on hand washing, being careful in bathrooms, wearing masks, and just being very careful. And it really works. It really does. And so you got to really compliment these people because again, I stress the fact that this is not a political issue. This is a healthcare issue that crosses all boundaries, and we all need to work together on this. And we just love the fact that we got a chance to work with him. We did South Central LA, we did Crenshaw. We're going to do a number of other areas up there, and it's all volunteers. They're going up there to help us test these people, and we get them the results. And we have a group of people that are educated on how to counsel them. And we do contact tracing, and I think it's going to help them immensely.
That's awesome. No, that's some really good work. Like I really do appreciate guys like yourself and people like yourself who go out there and they do good in the world and they want to help others, educate themselves. Why do you do this work though? Was there something in your life that triggered you to go above and beyond?
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you the honest to God truth is my wife is a crazy lady from Indonesia. She was the one that founded the Garda Heart Foundation because she heard me as a physician and a fellow of the American Society of Preventive Cardiology going out there talking about preventing heart disease, which to this day remains the number one cause of death worldwide. And 90% of it is due to lifestyle. And so she said, this isn't right. It's not about taking drugs. It's about doing the right thing with your life. And so they founded the Garda Heart Foundation. It was about 10 years ago. And in the interim, they've done thousands and thousands of patients where they've helped them get tested for heart disease. And now they're focusing on COVID because it's part of their mandate. And me personally, I didn't go into medicine to make money or to get famous. I got into medicine because I had this compulsion to help people. And I don't really care about money or anything like that. It's just, what can you do to make their lives better? And there's nothing more satisfying than helping people, achieve their optimum, their health, that sort of thing. And, from the perspective of money, we are living, we have, food on the table. Our kids are going to school. We're fine. We don't care about anything else. It's just, what do you do to help your fellow man? And most people just need to have information. What we found is that if you give them information, they'll actually make the right choices for their lifestyle. And that's the most important thing. Because if you're not doing well and I give you a pill, I've put a Band-Aid on the problem, which is really your lifestyle. And so we really need to focus on the lifestyle. And the pills become important if you do everything you can. Like for heart disease, there are things like stress, a bad diet, lack of exercise, lack of sleep, substance abuse, those sorts of things have a huge impact on you. But to motivate you to do something about them and improve your health, that is the challenge, because we know what's causing it. We just have to get you to do the right thing. And the same thing goes to COVID. We know that you need to be careful. At the end of the day, what we're all striving for is herd immunity. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but that means that enough people have an immunity to the virus that it can't jump from person to person. And the good news for your audience is that if you've ever had the common cold, there are 4 varieties that have shown the ability to generate immunity in your T cell system in your body. Now, that T cell system does not make antibodies. What it does is these cells directly attack the virus. So in Singapore, they found that 50% of the population had these T cells. So that means that we're closer to herd immunity than we thought, because the other arm of your immune system is the B cells, and they make antibodies. And the way I explain that to people is the B cells are the gun, the antibodies are the bullet. Okay, the bullet kills the virus. And so you got 2 options to fight the virus. And it turns out that people who get the virus develop immunity, their antibody levels might drop, but they have these things called memory T cells and memory B cells. And the minute you're exposed to the virus again, your body starts making an attack on the virus from both the T and B cell arm. So I just want people out there to understand that we are actually not as bad off as everything sounds. We're doing better than we think.
That's
Okay.
good news. I like to hear that. Going back to heart disease and like lifestyle choices and things like that, and prescribing prescription drugs or whatever, like stress has a lot to do with it. What do you think? Do you think like, what percentage would you put on it as far as like leading cause of like heart disease? Like, would you say like 50% of the time, 70% is stress led?
We actually have data on that, and it turns out that stress is at least 50% of the problem. In our environment that we live in today, with the financial stress, the number of people that are available, stress is a huge part of it. And the problem is we don't really deal with it well. And there are things that actually really improve your reaction to stress. Stress causes a secretion of cortisol and adrenaline in your body. And so you'll see people with belly fat, they got a big belly. More often than not, that's a reaction to stress, because cortisol makes you collect fat right in your belly. And so at the end of the day, if you can interrupt that cycle in any way, and the things that interrupt the cycle are fairly straightforward. Exercise, in particular resistance training, not so much cardio, but more like weightlifting or bands or push-ups, pull-ups, that sort of thing. That really works. Tai Chi, meditation, yoga, Pilates, all of those will interrupt that cycle. It stops the secretion of cortisol and adrenaline. And just doing that makes a huge impact on your body. So stress is really, really a big problem.
Meditation. Do you meditate?
I do. I do something called mindful daydreaming.
Really?
Yeah, look, I grew up in the 60s, so I was into transcendental meditation. I'm probably the only person on your show that saw Jimi Hendrix live.
Really?
Yeah, and Jefferson Airplane, Savoy Brown.
Jimi Hendrix live. What was that like?
The Doors. Oh my God. My sister was with me. She's a year younger, and he had the big frizzy hair at the time. We were at the Fillmore West, and he leaned over her while we were sitting on the floor in the Fillmore West, and she freaked out. She was like, "What is this?" But it was amazing. I'm not kidding you. It was one of the best experiences. And we saw the Doors live in Calgary, and the band. I don't know if you know the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were all good groups. I played in a band for 12 years. So
What'd you play?
I played guitar and the keyboards and bass and sang. But well, the way I describe it is, the band that opened for these acts where everybody threw beer bottles at them?
Yeah.
That was me. It got me out of trouble, and we had a great time.
How did you complete medicine or medical school doing all that?
You know what? I had to quit the band to do that. And my bandmates, they didn't speak to me for about 7 years. They wouldn't forgive me. We were not doing too badly. And, I just, one day I had an epiphany and it said, you know what, Doug, you need to help people. You need to go out and do something different than what you're doing. And that's the reason why I went into medicine. And,
You didn't have any like parents or anybody that was a doctor or anything like that?
no, actually I'm from Montana and I'm one of the first cousins that actually went to college. How about
Really?
that?
Wow.
Yeah. So for me, it was a big deal. And, like when you, in Montana, I grew up in a town of 800 people. And then I grew up on Flathead Lake, which if you go look it up in Montana, it's the northwestern part of Montana. It's the biggest freshwater lake west of the Mississippi. I grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation. It's the most beautiful spot you can imagine. There's beautiful water, the Mission Mountains, and it's just like God's country. And for me to decide to go to college and leave that was a big deal. And I don't regret it at all. And I'm just really grateful to the experiences that I've had. I've lived in New Zealand, Tonga, Fiji. I worked the Cook Islands, and I've been all over the world doing this sort of thing. And for me, it's just, you meet people in every country, and at the end of the day, what you realize is inherently people are good. Maybe the politics is the problem, but I don't know. Inherently, most people are good. And you need to pick up on that. That's what you need to focus on.
I think people get lost in the ego, like they get lost in that. They think that their thoughts are them.
Yeah.
They identify too much with what society says is right or wrong, right? And in the West, we have a different way of looking at things in the East. And
yeah,
I think we get caught up in that, stress, a lot of stress in the West.
Yeah, and for our family, we're a mixed ethnicity family. My wife is from the East. I'm from the West, and she's Indonesian. She's half Chinese. My kids are all mixed up, and it's a great thing,
Yeah. How'd you meet your wife?
It's a long story, but I'll make it short. Okay, she was it's an Asian thing. She's Asian, so Asian women don't meet men without having a chaperone.
Mm-hmm.
In this situation, the chaperone and the target hit it off more than the date, So we just met, and it was like one of those instantaneous things, and it's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. How long ago was that?
More than 20 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the most beautiful thing is that, from my perspective, 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with stage 4B colon cancer and given 3 months to live. And she is now sitting in the next room, not looking like a cancer patient. And I treated her, and it's a beautiful thing, because what we did is we did conventional therapy and we did a mixture of alternative therapy with, for instance, whole plant extract of cannabis, which is marijuana,
Mm-hmm.
purified CBD, and nutritional supplements to protect her body from the effects of chemo. And you would not believe that she is a stage 4B colon cancer patient who had it 3 years ago. And that's why, from my perspective today, I'm a hard scientist. But now I've had to open my mind up to the fact that you have things like India and China, where they have 5,000 years of observational studies that you can't discount.
Yeah.
And I always laugh when I hear my colleagues say, I need a double-blind crossover study. Bull. You know what? Do you believe that lung cancer is caused by cigarette smoking?
Do I?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that. No.
Well, the answer is it is true. Lung cancer is caused by cigarette smoking. Let's put it this way, it's a significant risk factor, but there are no double-blind crossover studies demonstrating that. Yet we know that if you smoke, your risk of lung cancer is significantly higher. Okay, so I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
You're good.
Yeah, but my point is that, there are different kinds of studies. Some of them are double-blind crossover studies. Okay, that's a gold standard, but you cannot ignore observational studies, which is sometimes using the patient as their own control. Okay, and so now having been a hard scientist, I'm now more open to, I think the integrative approach to healthcare is really a good thing to do. Because what it amounts to is you listen to the patient. And I will tell you, I'm older and I've seen maybe hundreds of thousands of patients in my career. At the end of the day, virtually every one of them will tell you what's wrong with them if you listen to them. You just have to listen to them. And they're going to give you all the clues you need to kind of figure out, okay. And I also don't like the disease model. The pulse cardiac test, which we have, which is a serum blood test, which is designed to identify people who are at risk of having a heart attack in the next 5 years, is a preventive cardiology test. The whole idea is real healthcare reform is preventing disease before it ever develops. Our whole healthcare system is designed around disease. So like you can't even get some tests unless you come in with symptoms. You get my drift?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm a little
You're always playing catch up, right? You're always playing catch up.
You don't want to be there. You want to be ahead of the game. And that's really what we're excited about. And that's why most of the technologies that we're focused on are all designed around, let's find somebody before they get really sick. That's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. It's just tough because like some people, like myself, right? Like I could probably potentially have something wrong. I don't really know anything, right? But it's keeping having those checkups every year, like making sure that I follow up, making sure that I'm doing the things that I need to be doing, living that, being as healthy as I can, like eating, properly, not as much fast food, exercising, resistance training, making sure that I go to, preventative care, right? Going to the dentist, making sure that I go to the eye doctor, make sure that, I do the things that is necessary to keep track of everything. And then if there's something that sticks out, then obviously take care of it. But a lot of people, like, it's mind boggling to me that people like let these things go on for years and not go, not even go to a doctor.
Right. Denial is one of the biggest problems in healthcare, where you ignore certain symptoms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're a young guy, and the earlier that we catch you, if you have something developing, the more likely we are to cure you. Okay. So like for cancer, the earlier detection, you have a 10 times greater likelihood of being cured than if we wait until you become symptomatic, which is why we're really enthusiastic about any tests that allow early detection. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when your wife, when you guys found that out, like, were you very active in her recovery? Like, were you?
Absolutely. I was heavily involved in it. I still am. I have a protocol that was developed in Europe that is designed, it's not chemotherapy, it's designed to protect her body from the effects of chemotherapy. So it involves things like squalene, vitamin D, lactoferrin, vitamin B12, these sorts of things that basically protect your body from the effects of chemotherapy. And it's all science driven, it's all evidence based. And the mere fact that she's still here 3 years later is just evidence of the fact that if you do these things, nutrition is a key part of it too, by the way.
Sure.
A lot of cancer patients, chemotherapy destroys your appetite. You become cachectic, you lose weight. The reason I use an extract of cannabis sativa, which is a marijuana essentially, is that it has two things that it does for you. Number one, it's anti-cancer. And most people don't know this. It's the whole plant extract, not the THC. So there are compounds in hemp and cannabis that are terpenes, polyphenols, flavonoids. These things are anti-cancer. And if you extract the whole plant, then you get the benefit of that. But the other thing is that the THC removes the nausea from the chemotherapy and stimulates your appetite. And so it's like it's a triple whammy in terms of benefit for cancer patients. And you're not taking drugs that are interfering with your body. they actually are helping you fight the cancer. And I honestly believe that that's a key part of why she's doing as well as she is. And we use those same things on heart disease patients, in particular for stress, that sort of thing, you know. So, but again, what I'm stressing is at this point in my career, I have opened my mind up to the fact that we can learn things from other cultures, and you should open your mind up to these things because they do work. Now, I want to, anybody that's listening, I want to let you know that the evidence is very clear that if you do alternative therapies alone, your survival rate is going to be very low. But if you combine these alternative therapies with conventional therapy, you're going to do better than either of them alone. There's no question about it. But please don't, like, we actually went to Israel and Spain to study their protocols for cancer treatment. So these are all evidence-based, but you don't want to ignore the traditional chemotherapy and that sort of thing. They work better when you use them in combination with some of these other things. That's really important because a lot of my friends that are involved in studies of these things get a lot of people that come in and they don't want to take chemotherapy. Well, that's your personal choice, but you need to know that the data suggests that you should do both. And there's no question about that. Okay.
Where can people go to find the data? For a person like me, an average guy, and I want to read up more on this. Like, what is a great resource?
So it's really difficult because a lot of the data was suppressed because it was illegal up until recently. One of the interesting things is the Trump administration has basically enabled um, um, the use of certain therapies as a humanitarian thing for people. So it's more open now. What I would recommend you do is you look up a lady named, for the THC and cannabis and CBD, I recommend you look up Christina Sanchez. She's a PhD who's in Madrid, Spain now, but she came out of UCI in California. And her boss is Dr. Guzman. And they are at the forefront of research for cannabis and hemp and treatment of cancer. And in terms of heart disease, it's a little harder because there's a total industry built around lowering LDL cholesterol and that sort of thing. But if you look up inflammation and heart disease, you're going to find some more things about that. Okay. And in terms of cancer itself, there is a whole industry built around chemotherapy. And chemotherapy, as everybody knows, is a poison. It's a toxin that's introduced into your body. And the theory is that the cancer cells, because they're growing more rapidly, are more susceptible to that. And the beauty of what we're learning today is there are targeted therapies now that are not so toxic to your normal cells. Because most of these poisons don't just damage the cancer cells. Any cell in your body that's growing rapidly, like your skin cells, your GI cells, your sperm producing cells, those sorts of things, they're all going to be susceptible to the chemotherapy. But there are targeted therapies now that are based on abnormalities that have been discovered in cancer cells. And these are monoclonal antibodies that specifically go after those. You can just look those up online. Just look up, Keytruda and some of these other ones. And there's a whole new series of treatments that are coming out that are really magic. And so again, I just want to convey to the audience that my enthusiasm for where we're going with all of these things is very, very high for COVID, for cancer. We're doing better than we have been. The one area where we're not doing so well is cardiac disease. I will tell you that in 2015, we had a prevalence of cardiac disease that was not expected until 2030. And what that means is we're really good at treating disease after you get it and keeping you alive, but we're not good at preventing it. And honestly, real healthcare reform is preventing disease.
Sure.
So we need to get back to looking at lifestyle, because that's where even cancer, 60% of cancer is due to lifestyle.
Sure.
90% of heart disease is due to lifestyle. So, we know where we need to go. So let's just go there, right?
Let's just go there. I
Yeah.
love it. Dr. Harrington, how can people find out more about you? How can they learn more about Guard a Heart?
So thank you very much for asking. Guard a Heart has a website with a lot of information. It's www.guardaheart.org, and you will find a wealth of links there. The other thing is, for cardiac disease, I would recommend you go to www.pulstest.com, and there are a lot of links there to a lot of information that will help you understand how to better improve your life. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can reach me through both of those websites. Okay.
Awesome. Last question, kind of big, and then I'll let you go watch the debate.
I don't watch the debate. I'm
What
gonna
do
go have a glass of wine and watch the boats fly in and out of
There
here.
you go.
Yeah.
And you can think about this too.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be?
You know what? I would like people to remember that there was a doctor that had 6 kids and a beautiful wife that cared about people and did everything he could to help them have a better life. And if that comes out of whatever I do, I'm going to feel like I was a success. Okay. I just want people to have their optimum health and and a good life. That's it.
It's beautiful, man. Thank you so much, Dr. Harrington, for coming on the show, sparing some time from the family to come talk to us. I really do. I thank you. I appreciate all of that.
Well, thank you for having me. And if you want to reach out to me, they can get to me through you. Okay.
Awesome.
I want to say thank you to Dr. Harrington for joining the show. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, the downloader, who has gotten me where I'm at today. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I really hope that you enjoy this podcast. And for those that are still hustling, that are still going out there, that are still pursuing their dreams, keep going. Keep pushing. The path will show its way. Trust me. It will present to you opportunities that you need to pursue, and it will put you where you need to be. Have faith. Have faith in yourself, if anything. Keep faith in yourself. Believe in yourself. Love yourself. And opportunities will arise, and opportunities will be knocking at your door, I promise you. So until next time, guys, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you guys later.